Om Namo Bhagavate Ramanaya. Thank you, Ohio Satsang Group. This is the Michigan Satsang Group. Happy Mother's Day. Today we have a reading from Book 7, The Guiding Presence, The Tiger's Prey by Saroja, and a reading from Ramana Maharshi, The Path of Self-Knowledge by Arthur Rosborn on devotee F.H. Humphreys, and finally a chanting Annamalai Venba by Kalpana Murli Kumar.
Arunachala Ramana, The Guiding Presence, Book 7, Chapter 82, The Tiger's Prey. Why does Ramana enter a person's life and how? No one but he knows the answer. The experience of many is a testimony for his silent, dew-like entry into a life to redeem it, to make it whole. Things would be made easy for the life-giving contact. A friend would provide the fare, money would come from unexpected quarters, bosses would not only permit but even strongly suggest visiting the Maharshi and Sri Ramanashramam. In far-off Spain, a book, to spark the interest, would be placed in one's hand, though the way of it would not be known to the receiver of grace. Years in India would have been wasted with no knowledge of Master's life or teachings, and then suddenly, without notice, every worthwhile book would come to a person's notice, making them the breakfast, lunch, tea, and dinner of the fortunate one. Be it a small village in Netherlands or a forest hermitage, Ramana would step in quietly and claim his flock. Often he would literally give his shoulder strong enough to hold the burden of the universe to a devotee in need of help and solace. Not a single word may be exchanged in months, but wonderful grace would be poured in through the incomparable grace of his steady and shining eyes. Drug addiction would end just by the penetrating look. Looking at the mysterious ways of Ramana's advent into the life of his marked people, one is reminded of the story of Saint Sundarramamurthy, narrated by Ramana to Surnagamma. Sundarramamurthy was seated before the sacred fire, all set for marriage, awaiting his bride. At this 12th hour, the great Lord Shiva appeared in the guise of an old Brahmin to stop the marriage and claim him as his own. Shiva produced the necessary document to prove that the bridegroom was pledged forever to serve him. Sundarramurthy reviled Shiva as a madman, only to fall headlong into devoted service when the truth of the relationship was revealed as a relationship which was not bound by time. Hasn't Ramana himself hinted to Chadwick that the Guru and the disciple are bound together, always cutting through time barriers? Once Ramana enters a life, the burning sand of the worldly life would be carpeted, laden thick with fragrant flowers, and a strange gladness would fill the journey homeward to the heart. Not that one would be freed from Maya's sway straight away, but it is certain that his grip would be tight and firm, never letting one stray away altogether from the quest. One becomes Ramana's food, no matter however vile, however sinful one may be. Can a prey which has fallen into a spider's web or a tiger's jaw escape? But when? How long should one toss between the profane and the divine? To be drawn to the great force and yet to be denied the feel of its presence, as it often happens, it's a torture. Ramana's magnetic body did not go the way of all flesh in April 1950. The vivid, tangible, even physical impact continues to be felt sometimes through dreams and visions, but always felt by those whom Ramana has chosen to make his for some unaccountable reason. True, Ramana's entry into one's life cannot be in vain. But for those who are content to remain in the sidelines, for those the good and bad fruits of karma are still tasty, the full impact of the great presence is not yet. Their contact with eternity is all too brief. The time has not come for them to taste, in full measure, the entry of the Sadguru in their lives. It is a different story for those of whom Ramana charms totally, who are taken over body and soul in a no-holds-barren union. Such ones have no eyes except for that indescribable wonder, the Master's eyes. They cannot escape the bewitchment of his smile. Nothing matters to them, save to be his and let his presence seep through every pore of their body. The joy of self-forgetfulness, of oneness, fills their being. This mood, however, is not for keeps, nor even till death's do us part. Imperceptibly, the body hunger, the demands of the flesh, stage a virulent comeback to the point of negating the joy of being Ramanas. It is certain that Ramana will not leave anyone by the roadside and that his succor would be there to strengthen and sustain. But in the intermediate stage, when one is not steadfast in love for Ramana, many ego traps of attachments seem to be there, ready to lure one away. For when the Sadguru's tiger-like fangs begin to chew up one's ego, the job is never done at one stroke. It is often left incomplete to be finished at a time which he alone knows to be the best. In this halfway house, when one is tossed between the sensate and the spiritual, when one is neither his nor the world's, one is inclined to pray sometimes, "Please stop being a magnet, do not take me at all, or take all." It appears as if Ramana is aloof, withdrawn, unconcerned. Not that he is really, but the dryness, the slipping away makes one forlorn. Sometimes when one cries out in anguish, "Where have you gone, my God, forsaking me?" one yearns and prays, "Put out this fire, sweet, cool ocean of boundless grace, put out this fire of separation." One finds Ramana's Arunachala Padigam, replete with pleadings to the Sadguru not to stop midway and leave the task unfinished. How truly reflective of the longing, the pinning of the impersonal beloved who walked on earth as Ramana. Occasionally the mood of rebellion too sets in. What else can one do except to chaff at Master's indifference, except to fret and fume at his hide and seek? Must we be a plaything for our Master if we escape being fate's plaything? Why should we leave one to be lost in the company of the worldly? Why should we have to keep company with those who know nothing of his endless beauty? Why does he not enchant by revealing himself in all his radiant splendor? Why does he, like poison, loathe the love that was once honey sweet? One may question thus, one may feel that he is not doing enough to take over quickly. One may curse the apparently snail-paced working of his grace. But all said and done, for those who care for him only, there is no question of going back. Their boats have been burnt. Inscrutable are his ways. There may be no holiday from the unfoldment of fate's merry-go-round. Fate's whiplashes may or may not be blunted. Loneliness may be one's lot. Then one has to remember that having surrendered, the right to question why has also gone. When the dark cloud of doubt and despondency grips one, then suddenly the Sadguru is there, giving his firm hand for the heartward journey. Having bartered his glorious state for our paltry self, he steps in almost at the very last second when one is ready to throw up one's hands in despair. Out of the blue, the mighty primal power of Ramana courses through one's vein. His tiger-like grip tightens and one becomes fully his prey. Once and for all, the sorrow of a divisive life centered on the ego ends. As one remains firmly rooted in the natural state which he restores, happiness brims over, within, without, and everywhere.
A reading from Ramana Maharshi and the Path of Self-Knowledge by Arthur Osborne. Page 111. Some Early Devotees. F. H. Humphreys. The first Western devotee of Sri Bhagavan was already grounded in occultism when he came to India in 1911. He was only 21 and had come to take up a post in the police service at Vellore. He engaged a tutor, one Narasimhaiah, to teach him Telugu, and in the very first lesson asked him whether he could procure a book in English on Hindu astrology. It was a strange request from a white Sahib, but Narasimhaiah assented and got him one from a library. The next day, Humphreys asked an even more astonishing question. Do you know any Mahatma here? Narasimhaiah answered briefly that he did not. This did not save him from embarrassment for long, for the next day Humphreys said, Did you tell me yesterday that you don't know any Mahatma? Well, I saw your Guru this morning just before I woke up from sleep. He sat by my side and said something which, however, I did not understand. As Narasimhaiah still seemed unconvinced, Humphreys continued, The first man from Vellore whom I met at Bombay was you. Narasimhaiah began to protest that he had never been to Bombay, but Humphreys explained that as soon as he arrived there, he had been taken to hospital in a high fever. In order to gain some relief from pain, he had directed his mind to Vellore, where he should have proceeded immediately on landing, but for his illness. He travelled to Vellore in his astral body and saw Narasimhaiah there. Narasimhaiah replied simply that he did not know what an astral body was, or any body but a physical one. However, in order to test the truth of the dream, he next day left a bundle of photographs on Humphreys' table before going to give a lesson to another police officer. Humphreys looked through them and immediately picked out of Ganapati Shastri. There, he exclaimed when his teacher returned, This is your Guru. Narasimhaiah admitted that it was. After this, Humphreys again fell sick and he had to leave for Ooty to recuperate. It was several months before he returned to Vellore. When he did, he again surprised Narasimhaiah, this time by sketching a mountain cave he had seen in a dream, with a stream running in front of it and a sage standing in the entrance. It could only be Virupaksha. Narasimhaiah now told him about Sri Bhagavan. Humphreys was introduced to Ganapati Shastri and conceived great respect for him. And at the same month, all three of them set out on a visit to Tiruvannamalai. Humphreys' first impression of Bhagavan. On reaching the cave, we sat before him at his feet and said nothing. We sat thus for a long time and I felt lifted out of myself. For half an hour, I looked into Maharishi's eyes, which never changed their expression of deep contemplation. I began to realize somewhat that the body is the temple of the Holy Ghost. I could feel only that his body was not the man. It was the instrument of God, merely a sitting motionless corpse from which God was radiating terrifically. My own feelings were indescribable. This is from a letter written to a friend in London by F. H. Humphreys and published by her in the International Psychic Gazette, London. In the same letter from which it is taken, he also wrote, The most touching sight was the number of tiny children up to about 7 years of age who climbed the hill on their own to come and sit near the Maharishi, even though he may not speak a word nor even look at them for days together. They do not play, but just sit there quietly in perfect contentment. Like Ganapati Shastri, Humphreys was eager to help the world. Humphreys, Master, can I help the world? Bhagavan, help yourself and you will help the world. Humphreys, I wish to help the world. Shall I not be helpful? Bhagavan, yes, helping yourself, you help the world. You are in the world, you are the world. You are not different from the world, nor is the world different from you. Humphreys, after a pause, Master, can I perform miracles as Sri Krishna and Jesus did before? Bhagavan, did any of them, when he performed them, feel that it was he who was performing a miracle? Humphreys, no, Master. It was not long before Humphreys repeated his visit. I went by a motorcycle and climbed up the cave. The sage smiled when he saw me, but was not in the least surprised. We went in, and before we sat down, and he asked me a question private to myself, of which he knew. Evidently, he recognized me the moment he had seen me. Everyone who came to him is an open book, and a single glance suffices to reveal to him its contents. You have not had any food, Bhagavan said, and are hungry? I admitted that it was so, and he immediately called in a disciple to bring me food, rice, ghee, fruits, etc., eaten with fingers, as Indians do not use spoons. Though I have practiced eating this way, I lacked dexterity. So he gave me a coconut spoon to eat with, smiling and talking between whiles. You can imagine nothing more beautiful than a smile. I had coconut milk to drink, whitish like cow's milk and delicious, to which he had himself added a few grains of sugar. When I had finished, I was still hungry, and he knew it and ordered more. He knows everything, and when others pressed me to eat fruit, when I had enough, he stopped them at once. I had to apologize for my way of drinking. He only said, never mind. The Hindus are particular about this. They never sip nor touch the vessel with their lips, but pour the liquid straight in. Thus many can drink from the same cup without fear of infection. While I was eating, he was relating my past history to others, and accurately too. Yet he had seen me but once before and many hundreds in between. He simply turned on, as it were, clairvoyance, even as we would refer to an encyclopedia. I sat for about 3 hours listening to his teaching. Later on, I was thirsty, for it had been a hot ride, but I would not have shown it for worlds. Yet he knew and told a disciple to bring me some lemonade. At last I had to go, so bowed as we do, and went outside the cave to put on my boots. He came outside too, and said I might come to see him again. It is strange what a change it makes in one to have been in his presence. Although Humphreys never stayed with Sri Bhagavan and only visited him a few times, he imbibed his teaching and received his grace. A synopsis that he sent to a friend in English was published later in the International Psychic Gazette and remains an excellent presentation of the teaching. A master is one who has meditated solely on God, has flung his whole personality into the sea of God, and drowned and forgotten it there, till he becomes only the instrument of God, and when his mouth opens, it speaks God's words without effort or forethought. And when he raises a hand, God flows again through that to work a miracle. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. I will be reciting the first 30 verses of Annamalai Venba. Annamalai Venba was composed by Guru Namachivayar. Of the many saints and sages of Tiruvannamalai, Guru Namachivayar and his Guru Guhai Namachivayar are widely known in the Tamil land. Annamalai Venba was one among the traditional works referred to by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. மண்ணு திரு அண்ணாமலை மாலை நாயடியேன் பண்ணு தமிழ் வெண்பாவில் பாடவே துண்ணு மலர் பாதனே மூடிகத்தின் பாலேறும் தேவகண நாதனே நீ முன்னட ஆதி நடம் ஆடுமலை அன்றிருவர் தேடுமலை சோதிமதி ஆடரவம் சூடுமலை நீதி தழைக்குமலை ஞானத்த போதனரை வாயென்றழைக்குமலை அண்ணாமலை அன்பர் பிறப்பை அகற்றுமலை அன்பரெல்லாம் அன்பர் பிறப்பை வளர்க்குமலை அன்பை வடிக்குமலை சிங்கத்தை வந்து சிம்புல் ஆகி அடிக்குமலை அண்ணாமலை கூற்றை புதைத்தமலை கோமாரன் கூடல் வைகை ஆற்றை அடைத்தமலை ஆரூரன் போற்ற சிறந்தமலை தீவினையேன் செய்த குறை எல்லாம் மறந்தமலை அண்ணாமலை ஏழைக்கிறங்குமலை ஏதேது கேட்டாலும் கோழைப்படாமல் கொடுக்குமலை வேழம் முறித்தமலை அம்மைக்கு ஒரு பாகம் ஈந்த மருத்துமலை அண்ணாமலை கண்டம் கரியமலை கண்மூன்று உடையமலை அண்டரெல்லாம் போற்றற்கு அரியமலை தொண்டருக்கு தோற்றுமலை நாளும் தொழுவோர் எழுபிறப்பை மாற்றுமலை அண்ணாமலை அன்னமுடன் சொன்னம் அளிக்குமலை ஆதரிப்போர் உண்ணுவரம் எல்லாம் உதவுமலை துண்ணு புகழ் கொண்டமலை அங்கி கொழுந்தாகி அண்டமுற மண்டுமலை அண்ணாமலை மாமா தவ நமச்சிவாயன் தினமுருவென் பாமாலை சாத்தி பணியுமலை காமாதி என்னுமலை தான் கடந்தோர் இன்பத் திருகுலத்தே மண்ணுமலை அண்ணாமலை அஞ்சு அக்கரமாய் அமர்ந்தமலை ஆதரிப்போர் வஞ்ச கருவினையை மாற்றுமலை நெஞ்சை திருத்துமலை மெஞ்ஞான சித்தி தரும் தெய்வ மருத்துமலை அண்ணாமலை தொண்டர் வளமாகச் சூழுமலை சூழும் அவர் பண்டை வினை எல்லாம் பறிக்குமலை அண்டம் உருவுமலை எந்தை குரு ஓம் நமச்சிவாயன் மருவுமலை அண்ணாமலை கொம்பு அணைய பேதை குரமகளிர் வானில் உறும் அம்புலியினோடு விளையாடுமலை செம்பவளம் ஒத்தமலை சர்க்குருவாய் உன் கடல் என் சென்னியின் மேல் வைத்தமலை அண்ணாமலை ஞான குருநாதன் நமச்சிவாயன் கருணை ஆனபரன் ஆகியனை ஆண்டமலை வானவர்கள் போற்றுமலை தீவினையேன் புந்தி கவலையெல்லாம் மாற்றுமலை அண்ணாமலை சரண கமலம் தனி புகழும் தொண்டர் மரண பவத்துயரம் மாற கருணை பொழியுமலை தண்டு புழுகு பணி நீரே வழியுமலை அண்ணாமலை அன்பர் கருத்தில் அனவரதம் மேவுமலை துன்பம் அகல துரத்துமலை இன்பம் விளைக்குமலை செம்பொன்மக மேருவினை வில்லா வளைக்குமலை அண்ணாமலை நண்பா குகையின் நமச்சிவாயன் கருத்தில் வெண்பா பயிராய் விளையுமலை தின்பாரளந்தமலை செஞ்சுடராய் அன்றிருவர் தேட வளர்ந்தமலை அண்ணாமலை சீதமலரோன் நெடுமால் தேடுமலை அன்பருக்கு பாதமலர் வீடாய் பலிக்குமலை மாதவர்கள் மொய்த்தமலை உண்ணா முலை உமையை பாகத்தில் வைத்தமலை அண்ணாமலை வைத்த நிதி ஓம் நமச்சிவாய குரு நாள்தோறும் மெய்த்தமிழினால் புகழ்ந்து மேவுமலை எத்திசையும் மின்னுமலை மாதுடனே வெள்ளிமலை வீடாக மண்ணுமலை அண்ணாமலை முக்கோணமாக முளைத்தமலை முண்டகன்மால் அக்கோடு நாகம் அணிந்தமலை திக்கோடு துண்ணுமலை தன்னை துதிக்கும்படி யார் உளத்தில் மண்ணுமலை அண்ணாமலை வன் தமிழாலே நமச்சிவாய குரு ஏத்துமலை கண்டு தொழுவார்க்கினிய காட்சிமலை அண்ட முதல் நீளுமலை போற்றி நினைக்குமடி யார் உளத்தே வாழுமலை அண்ணாமலை அஞ்செழுத்தாய் வேதமாய் ஆகமமாய் நின்றமலை விஞ்செழுத்தாய் ஒன்றாய் விளங்குமலை நெஞ்சகத்தை தைத்தமலை நாயேனை தன்னடியார் கூட்டத்தில் வைத்தமலை அண்ணாமலை மண்ணாளும் ஓம் நமச்சிவாய குரு செந்தமிழால் பன்னாளும் ஏத்தி பணியுமலை என்னாலும் மெய்க்குமலை பொல்லா வினையேனை தன்னடி கீழ் வைக்குமலை அண்ணாமலை எந்தை குருநாதன் இருக்குமலை என் பாச பந்தமர நோக்கி பறித்தமலை சந்திரனை தேய்த்தமலை நாயடியேன் சிந்திக்கும் சிந்தனைக்கே வாய்த்தமலை அண்ணாமலை அஞ்ஞான கங்குள் அகற்றுமலை அன்பருக்கு மெஞ்ஞான சோதி விளக்குமலை துஞ்ஞான சந்தமலை நாயேற்கு தந்தை தாய் சற்குருவாய் வந்தமலை அண்ணாமலை நீற்றை அணிந்தமலை நீல் சுடராய் நின்றமலை ஏற்றை பரியாக ஏறுமலை கூற்றை உதைத்தமலை அன்று அரியை ஓர் சிம்புல் ஆக்கி வதைத்தமலை அண்ணாமலை ஓலமிடும் தேவர் குழாம் உய்ய திருமிடற்றில் ஆலவிடம் தன்னை அடக்குமலை நாலுமறை அந்த மலை நாயேனை ஆள குருவாகி வந்தமலை அண்ணாமலை ஆதி நெடுமாலயன் காண அன்று பரன் சோதி செழுஞ்சுடராய் தோன்றுமலை வேதம் முழங்குமலை சிந்திப்பார் முன்னின்று முத்தி வழங்குமலை அண்ணாமலை வந்துலகில் ஓம் நமச்சிவாய குருவாயடியேன் சிந்தை குடி கொண்டிருக்கும் தெய்வமலை முந்தை வினை நீக்குமலை சொல்லறிய நீல் பிறவி துன்பமெல்லாம் மாய்க்குமலை அண்ணாமலை சக்திக்கு ஒரு பாகம் தான் கொடுத்து நின்றமலை முக்திக்கு வித்தாய் முளைத்தமலை எத்திசையும் போற்றுமலை போற்றி புகழ்வார் எழுபிறப்பை மாற்றுமலை அண்ணாமலை பாலமதியை மௌலியின் மேல் வைத்தமலை சீலமுனிவோர்கள் செரியுமலை காலம் கடந்தமலை சீறி வரும் காலனை காலாலே அடர்ந்தமலை அண்ணாமலை சிட்டர் இடரும் சிவநீதி இல்லாத துட்டர் சுகமும் துடைக்குமலை நட்டம் பயிலுமலை எவ்வுலகும் பாழ்படும் என்று ஆலம் அயிலுமலை அண்ணாமலை கண்டம் இருள கடுவிடத்தை வானவர்க்கா உண்டு பிறன்னாகி உதவுமலை தொண்டர் இணங்குமலை வானோரும் ஏனோரும் போற்றி வணங்குமலை அண்ணாமலை.
Over to Austin Satsang Group.